Got my medicine, filled up the water. That's my one saving grace is I love water. I like one cup of coffee in the morning, then water for the rest of the day. And the water that comes through the tap is always like it's full of chlorine, like drinking out of a swimming pool, or nothing in it, like drinking out of a pond. All mildewy. So I filter my water with a good quality Culligan filter. Then I boil it to make my coffee. Then I let the rest of it cool down and I put that in my bottle and I drink that. So, shoo. My blood pressure was a little bit high because I had hot dogs for lunch. I just wanted a hot dog so bad. When I was a kid, my mother used to drive all the way down to the Sears building in Washington, and we would ride the escalator. She was like, "Do you want to ride the escalator, boy?" I was like, wow. Ride the escalator. At the top of the escalator was a hot dog stand. And you got 2 hot dogs for 88 cents, which was actually a lot of money back then because back then you could get a meal at McDonald's. You could get a cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke at McDonald's for 80 cents back then. So 2 hot dogs for 88 cents was not that good a deal. And my mother used to love to drive out to the airport and we would sit and watch the planes take off. And that gave her an escape in her mind. She was a very brilliant woman who did not want to have any kids and very aloof. She lived with her mother and her sister, whom she despised. And my father worked at the same place as she did. And one day he came up to her and he said, "We're getting married Saturday." Halfway as a joke. So she told him, she said, "That's fine. I'm not doing anything Saturday." And they went ahead and got married and had one of the most dysfunctional families that you could ever have. Hey, Pam, how are you? That's a cool last name, Dozier. So that's a real strong name. When I was a young man, I knew a girl named Pam. She had a good heart. So, oh man. The blood pressure medicine has mellowed me out. When when you have a background of abuse, the memories and stuff always are in the background, just like lingering just below the surface. And it takes like 10% of my energy not to think about things and all from the past. And so I took my blood pressure, it was a bit high, and the beta blocker actually lowers the blood pressure, and it also kind of mellows you out so that the subconscious isn't so prominent. And then when I fall asleep, I have dreams like almost being buried in the garbage at the dump when I was a little kid, when this truck backed up and the guy wasn't paying attention and he dumped his load and almost buried me under 20 tons of garbage. And the only way that I got escaped was I slipped under my truck and held on the bottom of the truck like Indiana Jones while my driver pulled the truck up as he dumped it. Well, actually, when you dump it, it pushes the truck up. And I would have been toast if my driver had decided to get in the truck and drive off, and close the tailgate of the truck up at the top of the hill. I would have been toast. It's just by the grace of God that he pulled up a few feet and then he did a walk around like he was supposed to. And there I was underneath the truck hanging on for dear life so I didn't get mushed into the garbage, with the back tires of the truck almost rubbing against my boots. So I dream about that some nights, and I wake up, I'm like, I wish I'd known back then what I know now, because the one pivotal mistake I made in my life, since I wanted to be a doctor, and my father put me out like a cat and locked the door behind me, and then they went out of the country on vacation because they cared so much for me. And I was a good kid. I should have gone next door to my neighbor's house. She was a very educated lady. She was actually in the French underground during WW2. And she loved me like a son. And she had a big house. And I could have stayed at her house. And I could have gone to school, back to school. I guarantee you I would have learned French, because she loved to put on airs. And when she had a dinner guest, she would tell them she had a houseboy. And I would dress up in a black tuxedo with a white towel over my arm like tattoo. And she would call to me, Guillaume. Guillaume is French for William. Guillaume. Café, Guillaume, café. And I would go, oui, madame. Oui, madame, café. And I would come out of the kitchen with the coffee service and serve all of her guests, who were quite impressed that she had a houseboy. And I loved her dearly. And we used to go to University of Maryland around this time of year and watch the Christmas carols and stuff that they used to sing. I don't know if they sing them out there anymore. I know that the country has totally changed and turned away from God. Even the WH Christmas tree fell over this week, fell on its side. And other people have been tearing Christmas trees down and lighting them on fire. Such a shame. Such a shame. And believing that that will get them a ticket to paradise with 72 virgins, you know, such a shame for people to have their heads filled with stuff like that, not realizing that God is God and he can handle his own business. I mean, if he wanted to, he could split the ground open and swallow people up. He doesn't need anybody to strap on a belt and press a button and vaporize a whole bunch of innocent people, at a farmer's market, or vaporize a plane midair. So, and the one guy had an underwear BOMB. One guy had a shoe BOMB, and the other guy had an underwear BOMB. So that to me is an embarrassing way to go, is to have your underwear, go up on you. But it's a crazy world. It's a crazy world. I love the idea of God bringing in his kingdom someday and paradise being restored and all the animals and stuff. I'm a donkey person myself. I've always wanted a nice big piece of property with some donkeys. So, hey, thank you. So, the closest I came was Pedro. Which one of you bought for me very nicely. I adore Pedro. When I was a little kid, I went to listening camp. My Pedro stuffed animal was gone, and my cat was gone. Listening camp was very rough. You went there, and they told you to do exactly what they told you to do. And if you said, yes, sir, even that was wrong. They're like, we don't want you to say a word. Just stand here with these 2 empty buckets in your hands. And so, if you accidentally said, yes, sir, then they put a little bit of water in a bucket. And you're like, well, a little bit of water in my bucket, that's no big deal. But I guarantee you that once you've been standing out in the heat with 2 5 or 7 gallon buckets filled with water that weigh 30 or 40 pounds apiece, and by the time 20 minutes has gone by, your arms are just so rubbery that you can't even lift a Coca-Cola up to your mouth. And that was listening camp. And then we had to eat with the older guys, and there are all these delicious scrambled eggs and pancakes, but the older boys would eat the stuff first, and then by the time it got down to you, it was like a little bit of scrambled eggs and maybe a pancake left, or half a pancake. And one of the boys wanted to do a joke. And when I got home, I I was really skinny. I see I gotta switch channels. Hang on a second. I had to switch channels. I'm sorry about that. I see the internet is freezing up. Everybody says they're having problems with the internet. Even Luis Santiago of Grand Supreme News Channel, he said that he's having problems with the internet. And also, he's having people who are being desubscribed from his channel. But I went to listening camp, and there was one guy there, one kid who wet the bed, and they took both the little boy and his mattress out into the backyard, out into the yard, and they turned the hose on both the little boy and the mattress to wash them down. So after that, whenever anybody said, "Do you want to go to camp?" I was like, "No, I'll just work for the summer." So I went to work at a Esso gas station full time when I was 14. I went to school in the morning till noon. Then I walked over to the Esso gas station, worked till 10:30 at night amongst all these roughnecks and very much older men. And I'm just making sure the video quality is still good, because I had to switch channels. But it was rough. It was rough. And back then you had to wear a bow tie and a uniform. And when people would pull into the gas station, you'd run out and you'd say, "Fill her up." Premium gas was 26 cents a gallon. Regular was 19 cents a gallon for gas. And you filled up the car, you checked the oil, the air in the tires, the radiator, power steering, and brake fluid. And of all the men, I sold the most out on the island. When I would work a shift, at the end of my shift, the island would be totally empty of oil and everything, because I was diligent in checking people's oil and selling cans of oil. And one time I was checking this lady's power steering fluid. I had my hand all the way down around the motor, and the lady started the car up. And I had to very carefully reach my hand back without getting it caught in a belt or getting chopped off by the fan. And then I had to collect myself and be polite, because back then they didn't tolerate any rudeness. And I went up to the window, I was shaking, and I said, "Ma'am, you don't have to turn the engine on to check the power steering in the car." I left off 3 words at the end. I said them in my mind, but I said, "Ma'am, you don't have to turn the car off to check the power steering." She apologized. "Oh, I'm sorry," you know. But it was an interesting experience, because the men were very crude. They farted and grabbed their crotch and burped and spit and all the stuff that I wasn't allowed to do when I was a kid. Because my father either said you're going to hell if you do, or he had these long fingernails and he would tap you on the head and he would say, now I got your attention, you know. But, yeah, the gas station was an experience. And so, I bought a 62 Dodge Dart. Ugliest car that I've ever seen in my life. Google a 62 Dodge Dart if you want to see the world's ugliest car. And the headlights didn't even match. It had headlights at the bottom, and then in the grill it had two more headlights at a different level, which was really confusing for other people at night. Ugly car. And it came with a cigarette lighter and a heater and an AM radio were the three options. No seat belts, no power brakes, no power steering, no defroster, no air conditioning, no crumple bags, no airbags, no disc brakes, no radial tires, no wire wheels or any of that stuff. It was just four wheels and a little teeny 6-cylinder motor pulling this hawking enormous car. And when you would go out on the beltway, you'd stomp on the accelerator, and it took literally almost a half a minute to get up to speed with the other cars. And God help you if a truck was behind you, because the truck would come up behind you, boop, boop, like it was going to ram into the back of the car. And so you had to, on occasion, put the turn signal on and pull over, and the truck would go by, boo, like that. And Dodges were always very finicky cars to start. And they made this whiny noise. I used to call them ninny cars. They made this ninny noise when they went to start. They sounded pathetic and pitiful. And I was in traffic in Bethesda one day, and the cops pulled up behind me, and they said, this lady said that you were blocking her, her getting to where she wanted to go. Whatever the word is, I forget. And so I said, well, officer, there's 2 lanes. The lady could go around me. And he was like, I said, I'm not getting smart. And I went like this, officer, it's a Dodge. And that's all I had to say. It's a Dodge, officer. Because the car had stalled out in traffic. And rather than go around, the lady was just like, well, I'll sit behind your car and blow the horn and yell at you as you try and start your Dodge back up. And they literally took like 4 or 5 minutes to start. And then you had to pump the gas pedal and the car would go womp, 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 and shake. And when I worked for Chrysler and Dodge, they said never give a prospective customer a cold car. Start it up behind the dealership, make sure it's nice and warm, then you bring it around for your prospect. And they were good cars. They ran forever. They just didn't run well cold. They were fussy about being cold. I don't blame them. I don't like the cold either. And when I worked for Dodge, they were going bankrupt at one point, and they slapped together whatever they could slap together to sell. And I was in my little cubicle, and they rolled in this car that said Plymouth Grand Fury on the right side, and on the left side of the car it said Dodge Diplomat. So people asked me about the car. I would say, well, it was a special edition Plymouth Grand Fury Diplomat. And my manager was very lazy. And when it came to ordering things, he didn't look at what sold the best. He just went a yellow car, yellow interior, yellow roof. And I can tell you, the yellow cars only sold to golfers for some reason. You had to find a golfer to sell the yellow car. And so this car was red. I mean, blood red on red on red, with a red padded roof. And I looked at that car for 2 or 3 weeks. Ugliest car I'd ever seen in my life. And shaking my head, why did we order this thing like this? And so, in any case, I got in the car and I took it down to the shop. And I told the shop people, I said, I want a Starsky and Hutch stripe put on the side of the car. And I want the turbine, the deluxe turbine wheels put on the car. And put it on my account. So it was $138. I'll never forget. So Boss Carl came in and he said, oh, you sold the Bloodmobile. And I said, not yet. He said, where is it? Because he was very adamant about new cars not being demoed. You know, he wanted every car to only have like 4 or 5 miles on it. He did not like demos. So, in any case, I told him it's down in the shop. He said, why is it in the shop? I said, because the car is ugly. I'm having a gold stripe put on it, gold trim on the dashboard, and those fancy turbine hubcaps. He hit the ceiling. But in any case, when the car came back to the dealership, to the showroom, it looked gorgeous. It looked sexy. And it sold almost immediately. And another salesman sold it, but I ended up paying the $138 to have the car striped out of my account. So, lesson learned. And I remember when I lived down in the poor section of town, of seeing these 2 old ladies drive the car, and they had those big old lady glasses that old people wear, and the turn signal was flashing left for about 3 minutes as they were driving along. But it was my Dodge Grand Fury Diplomat Supreme with the gold striping and the turbine wheels. Only one of its kind. And that was years later I saw the thing. Chrysler and Dodge were wonderful companies to work for. I never had to cheat anybody. When you sold your first car, they cut your tie off. When you went to one of their luncheons, if you had good sales, you got steak, potatoes, salad, coffee, dessert, and a drink. If you had crappy sales, you got beanie weenies or macaroni and cheese. So you could look around at the place and tell who was doing well and who wasn't. And Bobo Renfro, the football player, was one of the salesmen, really nice guy. And he was just like the guy out of that movie, Used Cars. He would open up the door and he'd say, "You're going to like this car. You're going to like this car. Isn't that a pretty car?" And he would kind of like stuff the people in the car. And that was his sales pitch. "You're going to like this car." But I didn't hang out around the showroom very much. I had all the paperwork in a briefcase, and I would drive through neighborhoods looking for an older car. And I pulled up to this house, and it had a Lincoln Mark III. And I was driving a gold Chrysler Fifth Avenue, top of the line. And I went up and I knocked on the door, and I told him, I said, I'd be interested in buying the Lincoln. If you ever want to trade it, I'd be interested in the Lincoln. And they had a problem with the Lincoln with the battery or something. So they didn't trust it anymore over a battery. So I'm listening intently. They're worried because they got to go down to Florida in a week. And so I said, well, it won't cost you anything to see how you would like the Fifth Avenue. And the wife said, "I don't want any daggone Chrysler." And the man, he had the hots for that Chrysler, I can tell you. And so we went on a test drive, came back, the wife was still a problem. I said, "Ma'am, can I have a cup of coffee?" She said it'll take 15 minutes to fix. I said, "I'll wait." When she came out with that cup of coffee, I had the paperwork for the Chrysler and the keys to the Lincoln. And they took the Chrysler down to Florida, and I took the Lincoln back to the dealership and finalized everything. And, it was just the perfect deal. So I was like stomping with the big dogs, and I decided, well, this isn't too hard. So the next prospect had this blue Buick, I think it was, and I took their trade, and they ordered a car from me, this beautiful mocha brown Chrysler LeBaron. And so I ordered the car for him, and I sold the trade. The trade got wrecked. I sold it to a young couple. They went out and they dogged the car and wrecked it. And so I called the people and I said, "Your LeBaron is in." It came off the truck and I was like, oh my God. It's got the pie pan hubcaps, no power antenna, no boosted stereo, AM radio only. It was the plainest. It was the plainest LeBaron that you could possibly get. I had forgotten to check this one box, which was the Corinthian leather option, And so it had very lovely cloth seats, but not Corinthian leather. I checked the serial number to my paperwork, and I was like, oh my God, that's their car. So I told Carl, I said, "Carl, I screwed up. This car was supposed to be top of the effing line, and here it is, just the plainest I'm not even sure if it had air conditioning in it. Carl said, going back. I'll take care of it. Going back. So he ended up selling the car. I didn't get the commission. He ended up selling them either the car at a discount or because it was still a pretty car. It just didn't have all of the bells and whistles that they wanted. They originally wanted their trade back, and I had to show them around back that it was wrecked. So live and learn. And I learned a lesson there. If you're not sure how to do something, ask somebody else for their help. But car leasing had just started, and I figured, well, I was trying to expand my little empire. I said, well, if I become a leasing agent, I can sell Chryslers and whatever else car I want to sell. So I signed on board with the leasing company, not realizing that it terminated my status with Chrysler. It was one or the other. So I was like, okay. So Chrysler did not give me the money for the last few cars that I sold. That was a bummer. And they were very upset that I went with the leasing company. Nobody understood leasing. Leasing back then was for people who didn't have enough money to buy a car. They could lease a car and then turn it back in. That was before they had down payment for leasing and all of that other stuff. Leasing was a very hard sell back then. So in any case, I sold or leased a Chevy Camaro. It was a real pretty Chevy Camaro 4-speed, but it had a 4-cylinder engine, which is what they wanted. A little bit slow. And it was a pretty car, easy to insure because it was only a 4-cylinder. And everybody in my dealership was asking what I was doing selling a Camaro out of a Chrysler dealership. They didn't like that either. And then on the back it said so-and-so leasing. It didn't say Chrysler on the back of the car. So that was another strike. Well, old people are in a perpetual state. So I nap during the day, and then I have to stay up to take my medicine. So another 2 hours goes by, the alarm will go off. Got to take my medicine. That'll take me till like 4 in the morning. And then I have to make sure that I stay awake for that medicine. And then after I take that medicine, I can go to sleep at about 4:30. Because if I take the medicine and fall back asleep, my body can stall out in my sleep. And I've had times where I've tried to wake up and can't, and I'll be like slapping myself in the face trying to wake up. And, it's just something when you get my age. It's funny to say this, but even sitting in the wheelchair, it's like I'm being called back to the ground. Like I feel heavier than normal. Like the dirt is calling me back to it. That's the only way I can describe it. And it's very uncomfortable because it's like, if you miss your medicine, it's critical, and things that seem innocent can turn out to be a trap. Like drinking a cup of coffee without checking my blood pressure, or letting my sugar get too high or too low. It's not what I call a pleasant existence at all, but I have a very strong spirit in this old body. And the spirit knows that the DEATH is not the natural end for a man. God made us eternal beings. We were supposed to be eternally youthful and all that other stuff until sin entered the world and everything was cursed. So, oh, you just wanted a yes or no. Okay, well, now you know the real deal. I can tell you life goes by very quickly. I remember everything like it was yesterday. I remember driving my car with the wind blowing through my hair. You're off to bed because you're tired. Oh, well, I'm sorry I made you tired. I hope I didn't rub off on you. How old are you? I mean, young people aren't supposed to be tired. Young people are supposed to have all of this energy and piss and vinegar and all. I know I went for days at a time when I was young. I mean, I would go out and go to the bars, and then I would go get a couple hours sleep and drive a truck 2:30 in the morning, get back up to drive a truck. You're 27, almost 30. Back when I was 27, I was working 2 jobs and going out at night and going to college. Putting myself through college. I took business administration and management. By the time I was 27, I had been on my own for 13 years already. Earned my own income. Nobody gave me a blasted thing. I went back to college so that I didn't have to be on the back of a garbage truck for the rest of my life like I had seen some of the other men. Pizza place sounds nice. I bet that's fun. So, how is Michigan now? I heard that Michigan has got no-go zones and stuff going on in Michigan. So, I love a good pizza. I used to go when I lived down in Delaware. I would go and get a slice of pizza at Grotto's, and then I'd go get a slice of pizza at another place, and I never filled up at any one place. I always snacked at different places, and I used to love Gus and Gus down in Rehoboth. And my brother and I went into Gus and Gus, and there was a very pretty waitress, and I had ordered banana cream pie, and I didn't realize some banana cream pie was on my mustache. And I told the waitress, "Well, how are you?" And she was like, "Ew," you know. And then my brother didn't tell me the entire time that I had banana cream pie on my mustache. I went into the bathroom. I was furious that he had blown my chance with this very pretty girl because he didn't tell me to wipe my mouth. Another lesson learned. But I used to love going down to Rehoboth. I always wanted to own a t-shirt factory You know, one of those things where they print the t-shirts so I could work on the boardwalk and look out over the ocean. I was my mother's own child. My brother liked the woods like my father, and my mother and I liked the beach. I used to love to go to the beach. Well, Nicholas, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go. I'm going to go myself. So I'm going to pray a blessing over y'all real quick. May the good Lord bless and keep you. May he make his face to shine on you tonight. May he prosper you physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, even as your soul prospers. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen and good night.